Save the Cat Writes Novel is about to get jealous because Laura has a new best friend. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel and welcome back to another writing craft book review. Here on my channel, as you know, I have been taking a writer's journey and reading all the craft books, well not all of them, but a lot, and reviewing them here on my channel to let you know, is it worth buying it so that you don't waste your money or your time. A lot of the books that I read are choices from my Let's Talk Craft book club. If you aren't aware of that, I will link it down in the description, our next live show info, the book that we're going to be talking about, and I'll link the video explaining the next book choice and stuff. But basically, I choose one writing craft book every month to read with you, my friends, and then we discuss it with a couple of special co-hosts every month in a live stream, and we kind of just talk about the pros and cons of the book. But I also like to review books for people who don't want to listen to people talk about a book for 2 to 3 hours, or they just want the quick gist. Is this good or not, and should I buy it? So that's what I'm here for today. I'm going to be reviewing Story Genius by Lisa Cron, or Cron. I don't know, girl. Call me sometime. Tell me how to say it because I never know. This was not a book club choice, but I read it anyway because we did read Wired for Story, which was by her, and I did review that for this channel, so I will link that down below as well as our live stream discussion. And so because I read that, I wanted to read this too. So I did, and yeah, as you can tell, got a lot of tabs in there. So yeah, definitely thought this had a lot to say, and yeah, now I have a lot to say about it, so let's get to it. All right, so let me go ahead and start with the pros because I think this was kind of a spoiler. I definitely think this book had a lot of pros, and if you couldn't tell from the beginning of this video, I think this book is kind of a big deal. I would 110% say that I would put this up there with Save the Cat Writes a Novel. Like when I read Save the Cat Writes the Novel, I was like, wow, this is like the be all end all of writing books. I don't need anything else. But the more I started working on it, I was like, there's like some places that I don't feel is really filling in enough, and I need some more, especially the fun and games section. I don't think it went in depth enough on like what the heck is supposed to happen in the fun and games section. Like, I mean, I knew it, but like that's different when you're going scene to scene because it has like the most scenes. And that's when I feel like you get that murky middle, and I didn't feel like it addressed it enough for me when I was actually applying it. And that is where this book comes in, because I felt like this 110% helped me understand why I felt like my book was missing something, and this is going to help me figure out what it was missing, that underlying current to take the book to the next level, so everything doesn't feel sort of like okay, and then like just one sequence after another. So definitely I thought this had a lot of pros. So let me get into the specifics of the pros. So one thing I really liked, and what I would say the crux of this book is, and probably at least half of this book, is talking about pre-work. Okay, so we'll get into those of you who don't love a lot of pre-work in the con section, okay? But let's just stick to the pros. She talks a lot about work that you should do before you start writing the actual book. And I actually really like this. I think this was very nuanced. I hadn't heard a lot of people, I mean, I've heard about pre-writing from people, but I feel like she really gives a step-by-step, like, solid, there's some sort of plane outside, I don't know, a solid plan of things that you should do prior to writing your book, so that when you do start writing the book and plotting it, that it's going to come very seamless, natural, and it's going to have the depth and the layers that you really want. She really emphasizes knowing who your character is the day before your book actually starts, which I thought was a really interesting like way to think about it. Again, loud helicopter or something outside. I apologize if you can hear it in the video. So one of the ways that she talks about doing this is, I hate character sheets. Oh my gosh, I hate character sheets so much. I always like have the intention of filling them out and I never do. Well, she has a, I don't want to give too much away, plus it's like a lot to explain, but she basically makes some recommendations of some exercises that you do that will help you get to know your character better, but in ways that are important to the story rather than just random facts that don't really help you with writing your story. So that way you can really get to what is important about your character that you know prior to writing, other than what their favorite cereal is, you know? She also really emphasizes learning what the misbelief is that your character has. So this is kind of similar to the fatal flaw, but she sort of frames it as a misbelief, and there's something about the way she describes that makes so much more sense to me than a fatal flaw, because I feel like sometimes when you say fatal flaw, some people will just be like, oh, she lies, or she hates her hair. Like, that's not a fatal flaw in the way that you need for storytelling. She's talking a misbelief that prevents your character from getting what they want. And so she really talks about doing a lot of pre-work to figure out what that misbelief is, where the heck it came from, what instances did she address that, like, has that misbelief come up before, and what happened in those instances to direct her to continue believing that misbelief, or what happened to like reinforce that misbelief. So that has been, that was like a big light bulb moment for me in thinking about my own character and how I can incorporate that into what I've been working on. She also takes that to mean like figuring out your character's worldview, which I've heard before, but not in like depth the way she talks about it, and not through the exercises that she really wants you to know. And I've thought about this before, but I don't know, there's something about the way she explained it that really hits home, that like every single thing your character thinks and does and feels and reacts to has to do with events in their past, and that's why they reacted the way they did, that's why they thought the way they did, all that kind of stuff. And so if you do these exercises that she recommends prior to writing, then you'll have the answers to all of these things, so that when you're writing your actual like character, it will be informed by all of this previous like pre-work that you did. I'm gonna put the book down so it's a little bit easier for me to talk with both hands, because that's my thing. She also talks about figuring out character secrets. She says it's important that characters have secrets, and that they're things that like they keep from people, and why they're keeping, you know, that makes it a little more interesting, a little bit more tension. Readers like when we know the truth, but we see the character telling other people something different. So she really kind of talks about that, and she works that into like that pre-work that you do before you write your book. She also debunks like the idea of coming up with the story idea, which I really like. She talks about this thing that we're told a lot to like think what if, and she kind of works through like, okay, well, if you only answer what if, this is where it's like leaving your story shallow. Like, and she explains how you have to go beyond that what if, or what to do with that what if, other than just answering. She says that like stories need more than just a surprise situation, that there's much more to it than that. And she kind of takes you through like, okay, I think she's really good at this in the book, like taking you through step by step. Okay, so you got your what if, you got this answer, but how do you like turn this into a more compelling story with characters that matter and storylines that matter and wants and needs and all those things. And like I said, a lot of this stuff that she's talking about actually helps to develop and understand some of the things that I felt like were missing in Save the Cat Writes a Novel, because if you understand some of this, or you do some of this pre-work, it's gonna help you choose and know what's going to happen later in like those fun and game sections and stuff like that. And then she also talks a lot about choosing scenes, writing scenes, what should happen, when they should happen, that kind of stuff, which I felt like was super, super helpful. She talks about what she calls a third rail, which I'll let her explain that a little bit better in her book, but basically it's like you have your external and your internal, and then you have like a third rail. And she talks about like how everything needs to connect and touch all three of those, and that third rail is what is often getting missed in stories or isn't always being connected, and that's when some things feel unfulfilled, or when a story feels like it's a little muddy or flat. It's because they're not always hitting that third rail. And so she talks about that and kind of again walks you through. She doesn't just tell you, she really walks you through step by step how to get there. And she uses an example of a friend of hers who's in the process of also coming up with a book, so you see it while it's happening. And I actually think her example was really, really helpful in applying. And I feel like some previous craft books I've read, their examples were not great. Were not great examples. And like seeing someone also coming up with a concept, and she gave all the brainstorming, including like instances where like her brainstorming didn't work out and it wasn't quite what she was asking for. And she showed that so that we understand if we're doing something that's not quite exactly what she's talking about. She really talks a lot about cause and effect for scenes, and she really explains how she has this like really great, like one of my favorite things about the book is these scene cards that she includes. Like she draws them out in the book, and then, you know, she like has a little things that you can fill in. Of course, like you need to do this for all the scenes in your book, so like you can't write it in the book, but she gives you examples of it so you can create your own. And this was what I feel like was like probably the most helpful, the two most helpful pros of this is all the pre-work she wants you to do on your characters prior to writing the book. I think this stuff is extremely helpful. And then also these scene cards to help you really hone in on what's supposed to happen in the scene. She has all this kind of stuff like filled in. So she includes like what's your alpha point, which is like the main point of the scene, your subplot points and what you're going to be doing. She wants you to have the cause, the effect, where it's hitting the third rail. She also asks you this question at the end of every scene. It's like, and so, meaning, okay, and so now what's going to happen? And she thinks like your next scene should be inevitable based on you answering these questions. The next logical thing will have to happen. And so she's trying to get you set up so that each scene naturally leads into the next, so that you're getting that heightened like emotion and character arcs and blah, you know, that kind of stuff. But anyway, I feel like that is like so helpful in this, and I 110% plan to do all the pre-work. I'm gonna go back to my book that I'm in revision and do all that pre-writing, even though I've written a lot, and I'm gonna do scene cards for every single scene because I feel like some of my scenes need that amping up, and I also was really feeling a lacking of like connection between scenes, and I think that this will 110% help with that. She also has a section where she helps you come up with subplots if like you're not really sure. She's like, here's where you should be looking, this is what you should be doing, and also helps you decide what side characters to sort of emphasize or, you know, really choose them for the subplots. She kind of helps you, she asks you the right kind of questions and helps guide you into like how to figure out which ones you should really like work towards or work with. And then overall, there's just some general writing tips in there that I think are just really great. There is maybe a little in the beginning that you've probably heard in every writing craft book, but I will say that this definitely has way more new stuff that I hadn't heard or hadn't heard it in this way before. She gives new advice, new scene cards I'd never seen before. Some of her writing tips I think were really helpful that I hadn't heard someone say before, or kind of hit me in a different kind of way, the way she explained it. So I felt like overall, tons and tons of pros, and as many writing craft books as I've read, a lot of new stuff, a lot of new material that really I hadn't seen or heard before. Now there are some cons because all books have cons, so I want to give this a balanced review. So here are some of the cons. The subtitle of the book is like, it's how to use brain science to go beyond outlining and writing a riveting novel before you waste 3 years writing 327 pages that go nowhere. So the brain science part, she also uses that in her Wired for Story, and I honestly feel like she uses way more brain science in Wired for Story. And watch my review on Wired for Story on what I thought about her brain science and that. But this is almost not spoken about at all. I don't even know why she put it in the subtitle. I don't think it needed it. I don't think it helped it in anything. If anything, it probably deterred some people because they were probably reading this like, where's the brain science? This isn't really doing any brain sciencey stuff. It was just like, felt like a ploy, and I didn't think it was necessary. And there was very little, if any, brain science discussed at all in the book. So the second con is, even though I think her example was great, the way she watched her friend apply all the steps, like she was having her friend do all the steps that she's telling us along the way, we got to see that. The actual book that our friend was working on was so dumb. I would never read that book. It was just a stupid concept. So every time, like it was almost like farcical, like ridiculous. So even though the explanations helped, every time I'm like, oh God, this book keeps getting worse. This is not a good story. I would never read this in a million years. So I guess that was kind of a con, just because it was like annoying, to be honest. I was like, I don't want to hear about this story anymore, Lord. But I feel like that's pretty common that so far, Save the Cat Writes a Novel is the only one that I felt like really has had good examples that I didn't have much complaints about. And then also, even though I love all the pre-work she wants us to do before we write, and I think it's so helpful, and I'm like 100% gonna do it. Also, I hate doing lots of work, you know, like I don't want to do it. I wish it didn't have so much pre-work to do, but she's right. It does. I feel like now reading it, she's convinced me that this stuff needs to be done. That doesn't mean I'm happy about it, you know? So that's kind of a con, just like a little bit. Oh, and then also, it's very prescriptive. Typically, I don't like prescriptive writing advice, but I think I let her get away with it for me in this book because I agree with everything she's saying. She has convinced me. I think what she's saying is spot on. And some of the stuff I might just ignore a little bit, but she definitely gets prescriptive. So if that like gives you the heebie-jeebies, you might not like that. If you are a hardcore pantser, I also don't think you'll like it because she does not believe good books can be pantsed. She just doesn't. She wants you to hardcore do a lot of pre-work. And she's gonna tell you that's what you have to do. She will say that. Her tone is way different than Truby though. She doesn't say, if you don't, your book's gonna suck. Truby says that. But she definitely says like, this is what you need to do. You should do this. She even says like, you should write in chronological order. And she gives a good argument for why you should. But I know not everyone works like that in a very linear sort of fashion. So if you're one of those people, you might not like being told to do things a certain kind of way when you know it doesn't work for you. But my caveat to that would be, just don't listen to that. I think her advice is good enough that you can just apply it in the way that you already work. Like she says like, okay, you have to do this first and you have to do this first and you have to, you don't have to if that doesn't work for you. I still think you can get a lot out of the things she wants you to do and then just, you know, work it to what works best for your working style. So I don't let that deter you. And the last thing I didn't really like is she kind of discourages structuring or like needing certain amount of scenes or whatever. And it felt like she was talking about story beats, like that was kind of like low-key what she was getting at. And I think she's wrong in that, like, first of all, I believe in the beats. I think they're important. And the beats are not like hard and fast rules. But I also think that you could very easily apply what she's telling you to do to the beat sheet and they don't have to be mutually exclusive. So I didn't like that she was trying to sort of discourage that. I mean, it wasn't like heavy-handed or anything, but she definitely was trying to imply like, you shouldn't write that way, and I just don't think that's true. I think that these both can work together, and I think putting them together actually would be even better than doing any of that, either one of them separately. But really, that's it for the cons. There wasn't that many. I actually really just loved this book. I was blown away by it. If you watch any of my vlogs, I talk a lot about so much that I got out of it. I'm so glad that I read it. Like overall, my overall view is that I think this is an excellent book that every writer should read. Everyone. Even if you've written books before, even if you've read a million craft books before, I think there's enough new stuff in here. I think there's enough emphasis and real practical exercises and advice that I think anyone could benefit from, no matter where you're at in the writing you know, journey. I would really put this up there with Save the Cat Writes a Novel as an essential reading, and how much it really like will change the game of your writing. And I really honestly think that if you really like Save the Cat Writes a Novel, this is going to supplement that so well and help you know what to do once you're in the beats and what you should do before you get to the beats, so that you're primed and ready to go. So like I said, I 100% recommend this to everyone. If I was to say anyone maybe wouldn't like it, I think it would be hardcore pantsers, like I said, but I still honestly think that even if you're like one of those people who like works chaotically or likes to write on your pants and then outline later or figure stuff out later, I still think there's a lot you can benefit from this, and then just apply it where it can be applied in whatever way you like to work. So I don't think that should deter you. Just don't listen to her when she's like, you can't write chronologically or whatever it is she says that you don't like. Just do like most people do in life and just ignore what you don't like and take the bits that you do, because I think there's a lot of bits in there that are really good. So if you're gonna ask me, do I really need to buy this book, Laura? Do I really need to buy this? I'm gonna say, yes, you do. 100%. 10 out of 10 would recommend. All right, guys, well, that is my review of Story Genius by Lisa Cron? Who knows? comment down below, let me know. If you enjoyed this video or if it helped you out a lot, please be sure to give this a thumbs up. If you've read this book before, comment down below, let me know what you think. And if you have any craft book recommendations, comment those down below as well. I'm always looking for rec. If you like writing craft reviews and you'd like to hear more, I do a lot of those on this channel, as well as chronicle my writing journey. So if you're not already subscribed, please be sure to hit the subscribe button, and I will see you guys in the next one. Thanks so much for watching. Bye.